I have a little over 20 minutes to pull this off before I have to wait potentially hours just to try again or continue. So this could be a multi-parter for all I know. For reference, there are things I can do in 2D and things I can do in 3D. I will be working in 2D for this case, but for the case of 3D, I do need to explain a couple of things. My right click is your left click, which selects objects. My left click is your Alt plus left click, which moves the 3D cursor. The only reason you can't see it is because it's hidden. That's how 2D default works. You don't need 3D cursor in there. My W is your right click, which opens up context menus for whatever you've got selected. And based on the interaction mode, I believe we share an F3. That'll be the operations menu. If you don't know the shortcut or the menu location, you can type it in here and hope that it shows up where you need it to, depending on the operation mode. So you could use it. My spacebar is play. I don't know what play is for you. I'll get to that in just a moment. Play does exactly what it does on label, except it's for animations and simulations. For the purpose of controls that you don't know or want to change, edit preferences and input. No. Edit preferences key map. There are multiple types you need to be aware of. I'm using Blender 2.7x because I've been using it since it was 2.5x. That was very long ago. I've been dabbling in it since it was 2.5x. I've only not so recently begun to actually use it a little more seriously. When you go to key binding section, you can just search whatever it is you're trying to do and narrow down the results. For me, it's spacebar. For you, who knows what it might be. You'll have to check this menu and find out for yourself. But as you can see, I appear to seem like a heathen for using right-click select, which is basically what the community is named after, until 2.8x when they finally made left-click default. And it took a high-profile figure in the community to complain about this. But enough about that. Pertaining to 2D, most things will usually be the same. I use left-click to draw and whatnot, but when I'm selecting objects in object mode, I will be using right-click to select things. So if you want to check your controls, this is where you go. Edit Preferences, Key Map. Remember that. Oh, that's right. I have one more thing I need to address. Blender's Grease Pencil is what I believe to be an afterthought. I'm not supposed to be explaining how to animate with this software with this video, but there deserves to be some context first. even if it is erroneous, just bear with me. Way back when, Blender's grease pencil was just an annotation tool. It's still treated as such right now in some cases, but wasn't always that way. Even during those days, some people out there decided they would use it specifically to make 2D animations. So talks began in around 2015. If I'm not mistaken, I'll check the screenshot and correct myself if so. That they would actually create an iteration of Grease Pencil meant to be drawn with, meant to be animated with, meant to create drawings with. We got it 4 years later with the beta release of 2.8 when people actually get their hands on it. And not too much longer, the actual release came out. Of course, it had a handful of problems between a lack of layer folders and an interpolation problem I will get into when I get there in this video. But it seems to me that, and I can't be the only one who's thinking this, at the end of the day, Blender is still a 3D modeling software. Their main focus is 3D. So they put this in here to appease the 2D fans. That's it. Everyone else is on their own. They're basically going the extra bare minimum with this. So I tell myself except that maybe not so much with the intent to release Blender 3.0, Grease Pencil 3.0 with Blender 4X. They are understandably dragging their feet for the same reason I just explained. In this screenshot here, you can see that there are a handful of things they need to do in order to claim this as complete and release it as a beta. That's a lot of stuff to put into complete. 4.1 is an alpha right now, and we've got about a month or so, a little over a month at the time we record this, for them to complete all these tasks. I don't think they're going to by the time that month plus rolls around and 4.1 jumps into beta, which leaves 4.2 alpha. They'd still have some stuff left over. And some of these tasks have subtasks. You tell me how quickly they'll finish this before the end of 4.2's alpha stage. So, not only am I not holding my breath for 4.1 alpha to have all this stuff done, not 4.2 either. In fact, not even 4.3. So, at this rate, with each release taking months at a time to complete, being months apart, I'd wager it'd be somewhere around the end of next year or so before we actually get Grease Pencil 3.0. I could be wrong here. I could be over-exaggerating. But if this Troll Likes to Do list is anything to go by, if this Kanban list of tasks that you have yet to complete is any indication, you can pray all day you're not going to get any further in life. But why would I mention this in a video that's supposed to focus on animation? Well, the way that this thing is designed as a result, it wants one and only one thing from you. This is the default stroke you get when you start using this tool. The default Grease Pencil object, and these are two layers that are named as such to go with it. One's lines, one's fills. We already don't have layer folders, but I think that's way beside the point. The way Grease Pencil is designed, now separated from what is now an annotation tool, there's only one way they want you to make drawings and animations. At the end of the day, they only want you to have one layer for all the lines and one layer for all the fills. Anything else you try to do will be severely inconvenienced, down to the point of being prevented, outright forced to do what they want you to do. That is how linear this tool behaves. Remember that as I go through it and try my hardest to defy it, but fail miserably. I'm making a new grease pencil object because it'll just make my life easier when I'm making separate layers with different colors and whatnot. Though, keep in mind, I'm not gonna fill or lighter shade anything based on this tool demands you to behave. That's going to take forever on its own. In order to understand how an animation works in this tool, we need to start with the very basics. There are two ways to animate here, and I'm going to start with drawing a square, despite the fact that there's the ability to draw one right here. You have a frame right here to begin with. You always have this keyframe here. I'm going to move just one over. Right, more screenshots. I'm using multiple add-ons to help me with this. One of them is GP Transform tool to add shortcuts to make life easier. The other is an animation desk, so I don't have to jump so that between these, I don't have to jump between edit mode, draw mode, and whatnot in order to do things I should have already been able to do in draw mode. And for reference, yes, Grease Pencil 3.0 is supposed to have layer folders after 4 long years and counting. 4.5 at this point. But even knowing this, someone decided to take it up and try to solve it themselves. The try it was, it sort of kind of works, it's a little buggy. Next frame over, there are two ways to make a new frame. The first one is to go in edit mode and just start moving things around. The minute you try to transform this, you get a keyframe. You can choose how your skin looks and how far ahead it sees. Oh, a new frame. Watch this. You can draw a new stroke to also add a keyframe, but there is one thing you need to be aware of. Try to remember what that is. You can edit this. If you go to a different frame, you can. You can very much edit it. You can also manually add keyframes. I'm trying to remember just how this messed me up before, but there is a case where you need to add keyframes in some places when you're animating like this. I believe it's in draw mode. Where if you aren't careful enough... Oh, that's right. With GP Draw Transform, you need to add a new frame, or rather duplicate the frame before you start editing things, or it's gonna remember what happened this frame for the previous keyframe. Keep that in mind. Please keep that in mind. Now there is one thing I need to go over. There's a second way to solve your life's problems with animating. It's called interpolating. I'm gonna jump over the frame 20 for this purpose, and then duplicate the keyframe. I'm going to move this over and see for yourself. Here, one frame, the next keyframe, it's over here. So what's the interpolation tool? There are two ways to do this. There's the manual interpolation tool, which does it for the frame you're on. And there you go. It has a breakdown keyframe right there. Breakdown because it's blue. There's a... No. No. Which one is it? Here it is. The R section. You press R, you get this menu in here. Thank you, F3. Thank you very much. Blue is a breakdown keyframe. That's why it's orange. That's why it's orange. Remember that. I'm going to delete that keyframe. This time I'm going to scale it. That's what is one frame, that's what is the next keyframe. The other way to interpolate this is Control-Shift-E, I believe. That'll be interpolate sequence. Right there. As long as you're between two keyframes and you are not on a keyframe, this will happen. So what problem am I trying to get at here? Close, but no. Hmm. You know what? I'll take it and run. I'll take that and run for the hills. I'll make do with that and explain right now. There is a problem with the interpolation tool. Or rather, how interpolation works out here. As someone on Blender Stack Exchange also found out, each stroke is made of points. When you interpolate these points, they move from point A to point B in a straight line, not a curved line. This means when you move or scale objects, everything is fine. But when you rotate objects, it gets ugly. Very badly. There's no escape of this. There's no way to escape this. When you're using the interpolation tool for its purpose, remember that. Do not rotate objects like that. That is the main flaw with this tool. You will have to find some other creative, be it cheeky way of rotating objects without it giving you all these problems. Hey, let's try this. We're gonna animate something. It's gonna be simple animation. It's going to be an F40 animation. I'm not gonna try too hard to get into details with this. We're going to do it the simplest way I can think of. The old-fashioned way because, as I just explained, Blender has a problem with us doing it any other way. And F40, so the details won't matter too much. The old stick figure animation, only we have keyframes to work with, so it shouldn't be too hard. We have keyframes and onion skins to work with. We're going to try this two different ways, actually. One way is going to be more difficult than the other. Yeah, that's not going to work. Let's try it this way instead. Okay, that's not working for me. We're going to delete this frame and do it the old-fashioned way. How? And now for the arms. That is as simple as it gets. But we can also move this figure using the same keyframes to actually make it a little more interesting. And thanks to multi-frame, life only gets easier from here. This is the only flaw that it has. You can't onion skin your way out of this when you're previewing like this. So it can get a little difficult. But it works. That is, at its base, how to animate stuff. And as I've said before, you can also rotate and scale your way out of this too. But, I mean, move and scale. But I wouldn't rotate because with strokes being made of points, again, they don't rotate in a curved line. They rotate in a they move in a straight line anyway. So when you move from point A to point B in a straight line on a curved line with closed figures, things are going to start to get distorted and shrink even. You don't want that. It was a little shorter than I thought it would be. I'm not sure what else to take this except to just show off some drawing, some little drawing activities of my own. It won't be too high up there because remember, Blender really wants you to do things one way. This is a tack on from yesterday's video. Yep, we're gonna animate again. And this time it's going to be a little more appealing. I wish there was a shortcut for this. I don't know what if there is a shortcut for this. I don't know what it is. These tell you what shortcuts are. These don't, which means there likely isn't one. Let me check. Nope. Gotta deal with it. Okay, remember, if you scroll in and lose track of the playhead, home lets you fill the entire timeline with the first keyframe being on one end, the last keyframe being on the other, meaning the entire animation. Pressing 0 with your mouse in the timeline window, moves view original playhead without zooming in. Remember that. Okay, base animation. This is what we want. But I did promise it'd be a little more interesting than just this. Shut up! You don't need to hear occasional coughing. Anyone one stroke, and I have to go into edit mode to rotate things. I really wish there was an update for this add-on where you could affect the entire layer like this by choice or maybe by a shortcut or something. That's all I want out of this. And I will F20 that later. I know exactly how much this looks. I know very much how much this looks. Bear with me. In fact, let's make our lives easier right now and F20 some of this. Wait, yeah, nope. We can F20 that later. Less mess thanks to this layer being gone. It lets us see a little clearer. I really should name some of these layers. I guess I'll do that another time. Let's F20 our way out of part of this, as I should have done a little sooner, because this mess isn't going to help us animate later. Eyes will be here, just not yet. Nose and mouth, maybe. For reference, I'm drawing on the outer edges of the F40 lines to keep the proportions correct. In past times, when I drew in the center of the lines at least, things shrunk. This is what I'm trying to prevent. It appears I made a mistake. I'm going to have to figure out how to draw hands better than this, because what I'm doing here is a very bad idea. It worked in F40, but not in F20. It didn't work in F40 same way everything else did. So now I'm having trouble with this. In fact, I'm pretty sure I used F30 and it still didn't work. So now we're just going to have to improvise. I'm not going to tell anyone to draw hands like that. I'm just going to figure it out as I go along. Maybe I'll just make another video about this later. But no, do not draw hands the same way I just did. It's not going to work. It clearly didn't work. It will waste your time. And now we start animating. At long last, the animation process begins. Right here, right now. Yes, there are lines that need to be joined together. Not within the scope of this video. This section is what I want to preserve the most of, because I had the most trouble drawing it in the first place. This isn't how you realistically draw a hand. I will review that at a later point. Do not follow I just did draw a hand. Please don't. It's not going to help you. It is not. So how am I going to draw this while preserving this? Well, quite simply, presto! And now for a little offset modifier, because I'm not repeating that again. We can only see modifiers outside of edit mode, and at least in either material or shading mode. We can slow that down a little bit. Yeah, because 5 and 1 just repeat each other, so that makes sense. It'll continue until it reaches the end here, and then just starts over again. So, ad infinitum. Yeah, it's a little better. I'd say minus the hand, this went quite well. Didn't even texture it yet, and this is only F20. Very clear, this goes out saying the smaller the pictures. Let me try again. The smaller the pixel size and the more details you add, the more time it's going to take to draw things like this and get an animation going. I originally planned on tracing over this, but there's a problem with this. A problem I had encountered very early on in my attempts to do this. Body scaling. I used to just use the stick figure here to determine how tall the body was, but then when I added the arms and legs, I would figure, well, hey, this body's too tall or too short, and spend X amount of time trying to resize the body before actually moving on with my life. Thanks to a new method I encountered, I have actually managed to stop that in record time. I actually managed to stop using the stick figure method to draw figures. Cars, however, are an entirely different story. To you in particular, who I'm directing this video towards, I hope this helps in some way. Again, ask questions. I'm not going anywhere.